Welcome to the last session of the day. You have reached the end of our Adobe Developers Live for May of 2023. Thank you so much for joining us. We are going to get started here in a second, and let me actually bring up Michael and Cedric on stage. How are you guys doing? Let's see. I think Cedric, you're okay.
Yep, no, should be good. Yep.
Okay, let's check our audio. Michael, how are you sounding?
Well, let me know how I sound. I'm doing great.
You're sounding great.
I don't know if I sound great as well. That's awesome.
All good. Okay. So let's get this fireside chat started here. Let me just switch the fireside mood here. There we go. But
lovely.
We'll swap you with me there, Cedric, because I really don't need to be up in the big chair. Let's start with we started off on web platform, right? On where the web platform has been, where it's going. And so, we've been saying, hey, we should use the web platform. A lot of people are, they're going React right now. So how should folks think about that?
I don't know. I'll take a stab at that. Obviously, very good question. So I know that there's multiple ways to look at it. One is like the I don't know. It's like a casino analogy. The house always wins. The platform always wins. Right? It's like you have a foundational platform that has features, and you should just leverage that as good as possible because the platform was created for something. So yes, there's obviously alternative ways of doing it, but ultimately, the other aspect of that also we need to invest in the platform, which means that we as vendors, in this case here, Adobe, our mission is to invest in the platform and make it better. And so therefore, just us banking on the platform, on the web platform, that is in this case particularly, is an investment for the web, is an investment for the continuation of the web, and not just like, we're just gonna do everything with JavaScript. Now, having said that, there's lots of different aspects of looking at this, and not all websites are the same. Not all, and I can totally understand if you're using the web to build applications, right? There's a different kind of developer experience you need, different kind of developer complexity, or like the experience complexity that you have, where there's, one tool might fit better than the other. And I think where a lot of the JavaScript frameworks are a really good fit. Obviously, as a CMS, we deliver content into any kind of experiences. So in this case, we fully understand that there's, different needs for that. What we certainly have been focusing on is mostly the web pages, which obviously are intermingled deeply with web applications, and that's totally fine. But looking at web content itself and trying to figure out ways to really simplify the way those are managed and presented, and obviously the performance resulting out of that. So I think that's where we're thinking of. We're not saying, well, don't use React, right? But use React for the right things.
All right. Thank you so much. Oh, I jumped into your spot there, Michael. I do apologize. You're good. So thank you for that. Let's go to, bottomless CMS was a comment that you had made during our keynote. So what does that mean? Can you explain a little bit more what that means and why people should care about that, that as a concept?
Good. So I'll start there. The CMS services, being able to review, being able to approve, to be able to create components and visualizations, the composition of content from multiple sources, these are all vital tasks to create digital experiences for the web, or or also to deliver into native mobile apps or other places, right? So it's not just limited to web, although again, whatever, 80% of at least the experiences that we're creating are for the web, right? But the content management, or in the sense of the content creation, and particularly with the onset of generative AI, where some things are created by humans, others are created humans augmented by AI, others are created completely by AI, whichever modality we're going to get into. We're really looking at the place where the original content is created really being in not just one place, the CMS, but in many places. So this idea of turning the CMS on its head, instead of the headless CMS, the bottomless CMS, right? Kind of like the opposite of it, is really accepting the reality that content is created in many places and by humans and by computers and machines. And we need to have the services for us to manage that content across all those different potential repositories and sources. So I think I've kind of explaining the. Now it might be a little early, right? And remind me again in a year from now or so. But we'll see how things are evolving. But I'm pretty sure it's kind of my hypothesis that where the content sources will be manifold, and we are getting more into the business of managing the different content sources to create these exceptional web experiences.
All right. Thank you so much, Cedric. Michael, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, maybe to add a little. I think what we've seen working with our customers is, like Cedric said, there are different circumstances, different company environments, even within the same company, where the creation of content has different constraints, different workflows, different velocity. If you're writing a press release, that would be potentially different in terms of the workflow than writing legally binding documents, that sort of thing. So going into a direction that Cedric has called a bottomless CMS that sort of caters for those different requirements, but still on the delivery side, you have the same benefits, the same developer experience, but on the creation side, things might be different. And I think that is a super interesting concept that really what we see working with our customers, the different departments or the different companies within one enterprise, that really works well. And it's not one or the other. It's really whatever works in specific circumstances.
All right. Thanks so much, Michael. So another question we have that we've heard earlier is, so we've talked about fast websites, and they've tried, folks they try hard to make their site fast, but honestly, the Martech JavaScript drags it all down. So how do we think about, how do we maintain that speed in the midst of leveraging that landscape of Martech?
Let me take a stab at this first, and Cedric, I'm sure you'll have plenty to say about that as well. I think when we talk about the performance of web experience for websites, the first thing is to agree on how we measure that, and I think the industry has agreed on the core web vitals and the Lighthouse score as first the real user management and then the lab management. So that's great. So we have a common way to measure what we're actually talking about, and it's centered across what our visitors are actually seeing. So that's good. What we find is that if we want to get to the very top of those values, it is very hard to retrofit the technology stack to do that after the fact. So basically, if you bring something live and you get a Lighthouse score of 30, which will be kind of the industry average right now, getting to 100 after the fact is technically challenging, and it will be organizational challenging because you will have to convince your stakeholders, etc. So this rarely happens. So what we find is really, really important is to actually start at 100. to start at Green Core Web Vitals. Start there, because the other way around is indefinitely harder. So that's one. And then to the question, great question. The other thing that we find working with customers, of course, is that the MarTech stack, be it analytics, be it testing, A/B testing, all the tracking cookies, or the tracking pixels, etc., they drag you down. And what we're currently working on an engineering side, and I'm representing engineering here as well, is of course to find generic approaches to say, hey, we realize that this is all needed. There's actual business value in having this tracking, having the analytics, having the testing. How can we get it done and remain at 100 Lighthouse score, remain at Green Core Web Vitals? It is possible, but right now we're at the point where we're working with individual customers to actually put this into, well, we have put it into production with some of those, and we will continue to roll this out over time. But Cedric, I know this is near and dear to your heart. Maybe you want to chime in here as well.
Yeah, sure. So again, these are by far not all solved problems. I'll say it that way. Lots of work ahead of us here. One thing that we certainly have also noticed, just in the sense of the challenge, is that there's an ecosystem of MarTech that comes together, right? Yes, Adobe, we have part of that. We can do our homework here, but there's more than that has to be done. And so this certainly is an initiative that goes way beyond of AEM, if you say it that way, or even Adobe, but initiative where we're working with other partners. For example, we're working with Google and other folks to figure out how can we, again, going back to the web platform discussion, how can we solve some of those needs and some of those use cases, if you think of it that way, from the product management hat on, in a way that instead of, yes, everybody piles on JavaScript, how can this be part of the web platform to actually solve those needs that we have here for telemetry, for personalization, for experimentation, and therefore achieve that, again, as a feature of the platform and not this being arbitrary code that runs. And in this case, with the way MarTech stack works today, is you pile on JavaScript, and they actually even competing against each other and actually slowing each other down, which is the unfortunate reality today. So there's by no means an easy fix here, but I think as a lot of great folks have said before, realization of the problem is the first big step, and agreeing that this needs to be solved is the next one. I think we're almost there, that we're all agreed that this needs to be solved, and so now we just need to work on a solution that actually allows us to get both of it, basically get all the data and telemetry and insights you want, but also get a website that is fast.
All right. Thank you so much, Cedric. So we have a question from chat. So will Adobe's services act as a multiplexer for different content sources? I think we talked a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. I think it gets to the discussion about the CMS services that, certainly. I think, again, we're at the beginning of this journey. We now have Universal Editor that we shown this morning, and we had a session later. I hope you folks were able to join and see that, with our new delivery service that it has an open API to deliver content from AEM and other sources, SharePoint, Git, and other places, right? And while I'm not making any announcements today here, there's more to come in that area, where we're really looking at how can existing features of the way AEM works today become that, if you want to use the word multiplexer, as the person just asked, as a way to kind of manage that content there. And I know there's certainly lots of questions around governance and how you do this. And again, not all problems are solved. It's always like if you create something new, there's new challenges, and that's totally fine. But we strongly believe that we need to have our set of CMS services that can work off multiple content sources, and content's being created in multiple places, and we ultimately need to bubble them up into a consistent experience for a brand, either for commerce reasons, merchandising, or again, knowledge management, education, governance services. We obviously have customers in all verticals, and they all have similar needs, but there's obviously vertical specific parts to it.
All right. Hey, so you mentioned sorry, I'm going to ask another one, kind of a follow-on to that. We've got customers certainly where content governance is a key thing. So how do we think about SharePoint fitting into like content governance? And you'd mentioned we're just kind of getting started on this journey, so definitely room for us to sort it out. But for right now.
Yeah, very good question. So I think governance there's a wide spectrum of things. Some regulations that I know some of our customers have to adhere to or are constrained, negative way of saying it, but it's all about the process of publishing. So it's like where the content originally is, not so relevant. The part that is really regulated is the act of publishing and how to get to the published part, right? So that's one area. So certainly that's something we look into. We want to solve as part of this architecture change, also that we can offer these controlled publishing processes with being at approval, being at certain holding periods where content has to be holded for like 10 days before it can get published, or like again, pharmaceuticals and so on, where these are services that are part that we offer as part of that CMS services platform, and which again is independent of where the original content is. Now there's others where other needs, and again, I would just want to kind of pick a few. It's going to be too many. I'm just speaking out for that. Is where there's a certain amount of secrecy or protection that is needed during the actual content creation, because only a small set of people within the company is supposed to know about what's getting published, and everybody else not supposed to know, or whatever. There's disclosure management around that. So I think there are certain. I know, is SharePoint a good use for that? Maybe. Again, so what we are, just want to clearly state some things, what we are going to do and what we're not going to do, okay? So no, we're not going to build SharePoint features just to make sure that SharePoint has all the governance features that Microsoft hasn't built. Not interested in building that. If SharePoint doesn't have these features, then that might not be a good choice for you to use that, okay? But hey, there's so many use cases where this is totally legit and useful. Go ahead and have at it. Right, but what we are trying to do is really anything when the content is created and the publishing workflow and the composition parts, where we're certainly interested in that. And again, there might be another choice of repository. AEM, we have one. You can use that one. It's totally fine, right? And if you've been using AEM today, you can keep using AEM as you've been using it today, and you can start adding things. So we're not talking about removing anything that we've been doing so far, right? It's really augmenting our existing story that we have and connecting other sources to it.
Yeah, that is.
Maybe to add to that, to add a bit more color to what Cedric said. In those examples, you have like content that needs to remain secret, or that is regulated and needs to be checked by legal, etc. Maybe you have those business requirements and those workflows implemented in AEM, and that's great. Maybe you don't. Maybe you have those requirements implemented in like a workflow system, like maybe Workfront or something of that sort. So maybe using Word documents, and at one point you copy paste from those external systems into the web CMS for publication. So one line of thought here is, well, if you have that already, if you have the workflows already, if you have the content written down already, why not make it seamless to actually press the button for the last mile to actually get it published on the web? So you still have the regulation, you have the all the constraints that your industry has. Nothing needs to change there, but sort of the last mile, if you will, to get it actually published on the web, we want to make that seamless. And that's sort of another angle to what Cedric just described.
All right. Thank you so much, Michael. So for these, next number of questions, I'm thinking we're going to change the scenery just a little bit. So I'm thinking, it looks a little bit nice looking out over the ocean. And this is kind of key for this next question. It actually puts me in the fire a little bit, but it's okay. So how do you see the state of the web as a platform, and where do you see it going? So for instance, like the Gen AI demo during the keynote, when can we start using that stuff?
Good, excellent question. So first of all, we're currently working with VIP customers. I mentioned earlier about the prioritization process that we've changed, where we're working with those clients, and we're more than happy to pick up a few more here. If you folks wanted to actively use that in production, please step forward. In order for us to kind of figuring out one exact thing. So generative AI, and I'm sure you folks use ChatGPT before, and hopefully, and if you haven't tried it out, you should totally do it. Or in the meantime, there's all kinds of other places. Obviously, Google has Bard, and Microsoft has Bing, where you can kind of try it out and play around a little bit with it. What you're going to see is you're going to get text suggestions or marketing text suggestions or answers to your questions that are great. Hopefully they're great. But the challenge that we have here is we want to generate content that you're going to put on your website. The bar for content that shows up on your website is very high, at least for some of the brands that we work with. Now, I would make an argument, at least most brands would adhere to that. Yes, content that shows up on our website, there's like multiple reviews, we have professional copywriters and all that, and it's all good. But for Gen AI to not just be a pal, you can knock on the side and ask a few questions, but to use these large language models to produce content that you would put on your website, again, is a tall order. And we are working on that problem. We want to solve that problem. And we have teams that are dedicated to solving this problem. And so we want to work with customers to figure out what it takes for us to get there. There's a few things, just to give you a little bit of a few examples of what that means, right? So for example, we want to make sure all the content you have today in AEM already is part of that model. Because the likeliness that you either have this kind of tone of voice, like you have as a brand, a way to talk on the website. Every brand has a slight different way of doing that. So we want to recognize that tone of voice that you have. So analyzing the content that's already on the site is one thing. Then the other thing is that you want to look at is there's a context. The context to current visitors in, the context of the section of the site, the context of things. So respecting all that in order to make sure that the text suggestions that we're doing are actually something you will put on your site. So that's work that we're doing right now. And we don't feel like just shipping a ChatGPT integration just for the sake of it. I mean, if you really want that, you can go ahead and probably do it yourself. It's probably whatever, 50 lines of code later, it's probably easy to add that to yourself. But we feel like that's not really the value that we want to provide to our customers. We want to provide like a language model that is enterprise specific to your brand, to your company, and that really creates content that meets that bar to put on your site. So that's the work that we're doing right now, and we will welcome more folks to join us, and that particularly that have that esteemed goal of raising that bar of creating really good content. And we want to work with you folks kind of iterate over it and improve our backend, our AI backend here, in order to do that.
Yeah, I think that's key. Exactly right on, Cedric, to make the copy, the marketing copy, brand specific. To shed a little bit of light on the opportunity, if you will, as well. Use cases that we're looking at right now are use cases where content creation or copy creation requires a scale that many of our customers are not able to do manually right now. So that is around creating copy for A/B testing, especially with personalization or different segments come into play. So you're not talking about twice the amount of content, but maybe if you have 10 segments, 20 times the amount of content. So at this scale, I believe Gen AI will definitely come in as an interesting tool. But to your earlier point, the tool needs to prove itself in reality. So that's really top of mind, not to blindly apply it based on our hypotheses or options that we see, but actually apply this tool in a way that gets traction and actual usage in reality. So like Cedric said, if you have these use cases in your company and you're an AEM user, please come to talk to us. See if we can run some experiments together.
All right. Thank you so much, Michael. Okay, so what is the recommendation for new projects, right? So should folks use a new or the classic stack for kicking off a new project?
You want to start?
So AEM, as it's available, as it's GA today, I think many of our customers, many of our partners have established practices. They have built frameworks, basically figured it out to build web experiences for shared customers in an efficient and great way. So if you have all that, that's great. And you should definitely continue leveraging that skill set, leveraging that software that you've built, the components that you've built, etc. With the composable services and the delivery that we started to introduce, this is currently it's not GA. It's accessible in a way that we call VIP projects. So we're working with specific customers to bring websites live into production. So it's not beta, it's not POC, it's actually a production service, but still not GA. And the customers that we're working with basically are the ones that we're interested in, have an actual need, a deadline, and a desire, a business need to go live with a certain experience at a given point in time. So we're really looking for production usage to prove out this new stack. But I really want to repeat that we've made huge investments. We continue to make huge investments in cloud service. The thing that we're currently working on, I look at as an evolution of cloud service, not a replacement by any means. So if you have existing projects that are being kicked off, if you have basically a continuity of your business, by all means, cloud service is a great way to make those projects real. If you're if you have specific needs on core web vitals, lighthouse scores, and customer projects for us to collaborate on, then please come talk to us. Then we'll see if it fits the VIP program for this new stack that we're building.
All right, very cool. So how does AEM and this new stack work together? So if you think about like translation workflows, how do you envision those sorts of scenarios working?
Yeah, it's so the question, the way it's asked, it's sort of as a bit of a wrong premise. So it is AEM. It is an evolution of AEM Cloud Service. How do they work together? What we're currently looking at, in essence, what we're looking at is two things. The one thing is, how do we empower our partners and our customers to deliver experiences faster and deliver faster and make those experiences faster? So that's one thing. That's about the delivery stack. This has nothing to do with content management. That is an evolution of AEM Cloud Service. And the second thing is, the second aspect that we're looking at is, how do we empower our customers to use various content sources that drives those experiences? And in a way, if you look back at last 20 years of AEM, we almost each and every customer had this and that back office system that they integrated with to drive their digital business on their website. It's not that different from what we're doing. It's not that different from what we did the last 20 years, if you will, because we're sort of making different content sources not an afterthought, but actually a first-class citizen, or at least some of them. But it's really it is on both sides, on the delivery side and the content management side. It's still AEM. So an evolution of cloud service, the next step for cloud service. Cedric, I'm sure you have thoughts and comments on that as well.
Yeah, so I look at this as, I guess there's different ways of kind of describing it. But for example, I look at our new Edge delivery service as it sounds like the new publish server, right? The author server stays the way it is, and the publish server is now a new publish server. Now, that doesn't mean the old publish server goes away. You still have existing sites that run like this. It's totally fine, right? You can keep running like that. But new things you're building would, instead of going through today, the kind of dispatcher plus publish couple, if you think of it that way, will then go, if you hit the publish button in AEM, it will just go to the new publish delivery service instead of that. So I think, that's one way to look at this. I think translation was a good topic that was brought up, or was part of the question. Again, it goes back to the multi-repository story that we talked about earlier. Is translation one of those services that we as a CMS need to solve, or are the translation vendors going to do it? I don't know the answer for that. But maybe, again, we'll figure it out. Is this something that, again, translation vendors that can do it? Great. They can already go into all these repositories and can do the translation for that. Or is this something that because we have, for at least some of the repositories, we will have read write, like you saw that in the demo that Meryl showed this morning, or like earlier today, where we were editing in context the content and it was writing it back to a Google Sheet. That through this read write access, we can handle translations for that too, right? Again, we're figuring out how we want to solve these things. We're more than welcome for folks to join us here in that journey on figuring this out. Ultimately, we want to find a way that is elegant. Elegant means that feels natural for the folks that have to do it on a daily basis. and allows to achieve that velocity that we have, which means folks can just independently self-service, do the work they need to do, and can publish at the schedule they need to and want to, versus like, oh no, we'll have to wait for this, I have to wait for that. But at the end of the day, to make a change on a website, it always takes like 2 months for whatever, right? I mean, this is a really bad example, but maybe just even taking a week is too long, right? So.
All right, all good. So let's change our location yet again. There's the last location change for the day, and let's just kick it back here. We've got Lakeside, and I'm actually going to bring in my buddy here. So he's just going to join us for this last little bit. So you think about client-side rendering, which is where we're focused today, but the industry trend seems to be edge rendering. So can you kind of demystify that a little bit?
I can either way.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I think at there's multiple stages. If you think of an experience being shown on the browser, there's multiple stages, and if you think of the pendulum of what is happening, and the way Bertrand was saying it in the keynote earlier, he was talking about the distribution between how much HTML, CSS, JavaScript you have, or in this case, you could make the same argument about how much happens on the server versus how much happens on the client, right? It's one of those things where the percentages are shifting, right? I mean, as you move things. And we certainly had a time where, when we started building CMS, we did everything on the server. And then we started shifting everything to the client. People were building single page apps and everything was on the client, right? And now the pendulum swings back, and there's a few things that we're kind of, splitting it somehow. Like, okay, some things needs to be on the client. So I didn't mean to describe this as one of being bad or good. Again, they all have their ups and downs and upsides and downsides. Well, certainly something that we kind of strive for is, okay, fast is the non-negotiable part. Like, we want LiDAR score 100 mobile. We're not negotiating on that one. Okay. Everything else follows from that. All right. So if you can, and again, there's not just one way of doing that. There's multiple ways of doing that. And we're totally cool with each one of those, as long as it does that. Okay. So again, I'm not want to go into a debate which one's good or not good or whatever. There's one thing we're not negotiating on. It's like, it needs to be fast, and everything else is fine with us. So again, we're happy to have any debate or discussion. Now, what we have been doing here is we come up with a suggestion, a proposal, and we have now proven that this does give you LiDAR score 100 plus a little bit of margin, so you can add some extra things yourself. So to Michael's point earlier, you want to start with 100, but actually you don't want to start with 100 and just like etching it to 100 and that's it. You can't add anything, because then you're already blew it. Like, we need to deliver you a boilerplate that does 100, and there's ways for you to do stuff and you're still on 100. Right? So as a vendor, we need to be even faster, because you can add your things on top. Right? So that's it. From my point, like, we're good. If you want to render on the edge and we can do this, let's figure it out. Let's do this. There's no good and bad. It's just 100, and let's figure out how to do it. And we want to have this conversation.
Yeah.
Right on. Michael,
maybe to also comment on it. I think there's some edge use cases. No, edge is the wrong word here. Some extreme use cases, to be clear, where only server-side rendering works from a technology perspective, or only client-side rendering works. Okay, let's take those outside. I mean, those are clear. But for all the rest, where you could do things on the client or on the server, I think it's kind of I want to say pointless to have a quote unquote religious argument about this. It's really about what you want to achieve, and I think Cedric just alluded to one of the main things that's on our minds. What we think we want to achieve, what we think is really important in terms of the outcomes, which is the performance of the actual experience. The second thing that is also high on our mind that I want to touch upon is the velocity in how fast you can deliver experiences. Basically, how long does it take you to find people, to skill up people? How long does it take them to write code? How long to learn, etc. And it's like the time, your total project time, if you will. And that's kind of like kind of related to the server-side, client-side rendering thing, because obviously if you do things on client-side with web technologies, you find it easy to find talent. But it's more like that's really the root of the discussion for or one, not the root, I shouldn't say the root, but it's sort of one aspect of the discussion. How you look at client-side, server-side, it's basically a business trade-off in the end, less of a technology thing.
All right, excellent. So one of the, think about kind of following on from what you were talking about around, these industry trends. So let's discuss, the positioning of AEM and how, we're changing and disrupting the industry that we exist in.
So maybe to take a stab at this. I think one thing that is really, so I don't know if you're going to disrupt the industry. You be the judge of that. But one thing that is really, really high on our minds is not just, quote unquote, not managing the content that shows up on the experience, but actually helping a lot on improving the impact of what you deliver. And we talk about the performance, of course, but the performance is very much strongly correlated with things like the bounce rate of your visitors, the time on page, and in the end, the actual business results, like whether it's you want people to click on the call to action button to apply for something, to download a white paper, to go through the checkout and buy something, etc. So this is strongly correlated. And on our minds, the question, how can we build a system that not just gives you content and gives you tools to manage content and tools to manage websites, but actually helps you in driving the impact of what you built. I think this is something where I think we can make a real difference to what you're building and how you're building it.
Right on. That's excellent. So what do we think about the trend of headless CMS? And, as a follow-on, like why client-side delivery over the industry trend? Oh, we already answered that. Actually, never mind. Just the trend of headless CMS and where that plays into our strategy.
Do you want to take me?
Okay. Yeah, sure. So the way I look at headless CMS is, of course, AEM, first and foremost, is a headless CMS also, right? Content fragments and structured content, references, GraphQL, or structured ability to to have structured content output. I think that's all good, right? And so the need for managing structured content or semi-structured content, is definitely there, and will remain there. Now, is it the only place where you have content that you're going to publish? The answer is no, but it's going to be a key part of it. So you will see us, and to Michael's point earlier, investing in our existing AEM author server to manage structured content, to manage your bulk or individually, allow folks to manage that structured content, build better tools for content modeling, APIs around content modeling. So all that is required. I saw a demo earlier for our new content model APIs that we shipped. And so yes, I think the headless CMS is one part of the CMS architecture, or the CMS or experience delivery architecture, and it's the place where some of the you think of what kind of content is managed there. It's usually it's the structured content that belongs that's in addition to products, or it's again there's different kind of more detail if you go down what kind of content is managed in a headless CMS or could manage in a headless CMS. Where we think that there's absolutely a need for that. So.
Okay, that was good. So let's, if anybody has any questions that's listening in, by all means, throw them into the chat. We'll get them answered. As we're winding down here, though, let's think about the evolution of AEM as a cloud service, and one of the areas where traditionally developers for AEM have been focused on Java, and we introduced out of process extensibility with cloud service, with App Builder, and offering those developers an opportunity to extend their skill set into JavaScript, etc. So how should we advise, or what should we tell AEM developers about evolving their skill set? What does that look like today?
So I think, well, maybe I'm just old enough to say languages do not matter so much. But let me rewind that. Go back to the start. I think if you're an AEM developer, the business you're ultimately in is to create web experiences, typically for customers with quite a number of back office systems that need to be integrated. I think that doesn't change. If we focus on the topic or the question, well, if creating just an experience is not enough anymore, let's make it a great experience, then probably learning about how the browser works, how it actually works today, because it evolved quite a bit over the last years. So catching up on how things are actually working today, I think that is probably needed for the job, regardless how you think about AEM development. It is something that the job to be done, which is delivering a great experience for our customers, probably involves. So, and that is, of course, a certain amount of JavaScript, client-side JavaScript. What we found, and this is not a, I wouldn't call this a strategic direction right now, but what we found working with customers as of lately is that when it comes to systems integration, more can be done on the client than sort of I myself would have thought traditionally or lately or in the last years. So it's certainly a direction that is worth exploring, even for system integration tasks. So to answer the question, should you drop everything? No, you shouldn't drop everything. But looking at browser technology, looking at web technology, as it has been evolved lately, I think that is a great investment for your skill set.
Right on. That's awesome perspective. Thank you, Michael. Okay, so that is, I think, the end of the questions we've gotten so far. So any final things you guys want to mention? And then I will close out our session.
Well, first of all, thank you for spending your time with us. I know it sounds like how to say it in airlines. I know you have a choice. Thank you for choosing us. Thank you for choosing Adobe. Thanks for flying with us. No, of course. I mean, it's. I know I always make jokes in these moments where it's like, really?
That was hilarious and genuine all at the same time.
I know. Like we have like crazy competition today. It's like Microsoft has their Build Developer Conference. I mean, you're coming here. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Plus one to that. Thanks for being with us. Thanks for listening to the presentations today. I hope they were useful. And please reach out to us here on chat, on Experience League, on LinkedIn, whatever, Twitter, whatever works for you. I'm happy to engage and continue the conversation. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, guys. And we'll see you next time. So I've got a couple of announcements, and then we'll close out the show.
Awesome. Thanks, Ron.
Okay, there I am. I knew I was in there someplace. Outstanding. So I just wanted to say, and reiterate again what Michael and Cedric mentioned about, we are delighted that you spent your time with us. That is fantastic. So a couple of things that are coming up next, right? Thank you. Adobe Developers Live is done. We're delighted that you joined us. We've got Adobe Summit coming up if you happen to be in Europe, June 8th and 9th in London. That is a fantastic repeat of, the summit that we had in Las Vegas, but it's also some new content as well. So definitely check that out if you're able to. And then coming up in September, we have the Adapt 2 conference, 25th through the 27th. There are a bunch of sessions that folks from Adobe are going to be delivering. It's an amazing conference. Again, if you're in Berlin, definitely check it out. First time in a number of years that they are now back in person. So that should be great. And then last one, Adobe Max, coming up here October 10th and through the 12th, Los Angeles, and again online. So definitely register for that to experience the magic of the creative side of Adobe's business. And that is, that's it. Oh, hey, I left the coffee sloth up there. So it's good that he stuck around and that you did. So have an absolutely amazing day, evening, night, wherever you happen to be. And thanks for joining us.